Comic Book Savant, Comic Sense, First Reads. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode is going to be a Comic Sense episode. It's going to be a First Reads. In these episodes, if you're not familiar with them, this is where I try the first issue or a issue of a particular comic book or comic book series. I'll do a full-on review of the book and see if within that first issue does it convince me to continue on with the series or not, and whether or not if I should recommend it to you guys in the community as a book worth picking up. So with this episode, we're going to be reviewing Calico issue 1. This is a book that was is done by Sigma Comics. They reached out to me via email and asked me would I like to review the book on the show. I was like, sure. I'm always open to try to help indie publishers out. So I was like, sure, you can send me a copy. So they mailed it out to me, actual physical copy. Most of the time when companies send out stuff for me to review, they just send me a PDF, but they're old school, which is cool. They sent me out a book. It retails for $2.99. It is written by H.H. German. Artwork is done by Javier Orabich. The colorist is Daniel Grimaldi, and lettering is done also by Javier Orabich. And basically, from this book, Calico is, I guess, a cat. I think it's Calico is a type of cat. So he has a kind of Black Panther vibe, even from the image, the cover image of how he kind of is posed on it. He totally gives you a Black Panther vibe. And this Sigma or H.H. German is definitely new to me on my radar. Never heard of Sigma Comics before they reached out to me via email. I'm not familiar with H.H. German. This is my first exposure to his writing. Like I said, we're introduced right off the bat in the book with this premise where basically Calico is a defender of the helpless when it comes to kind of animals. So you get flashbacks of the main character, which I went back through the book and I don't think at any point they ever give us the lead character's name. But you get these flashbacks of his backstory about, being bullied as a child. Also the bully that bullied him, also being abusive to animals. And we're introduced to stuff. It jumps back and forth from present and past tense. Present day, and then flashbacks of animals being abused and murdered by the hands of just vicious people, and this character kind of suiting up, and he has some kind of like an oracle type character that feeds him information about these bad individuals, and him standing up for vengeance. It's kind of a vibe of Black Panther mixed with kind of the Phantom in a way of, he's defended in the forest and the jungle with the Phantom, and and Black Panther. It's that it gives you that distinct vibe, but he protects the weak that cannot protect themselves. And the weird thing about this whole procedure of receiving this book for review from Sigma is that, normally when companies reach out to me about stuff they want me to review, they normally give me a synopsis or a breakdown of the book before they send it to me to see if it's something I would even want to review. They really didn't do that. And then after they contacted me and said, hey, did you receive the book? Then they launch in like giving me a disclaimer that this is a very graphic book because it depicts acts of animal cruelty and so on and so forth. And I was just like, with the kind to me, it would have made sense if you would have gave me that disclaimer up front, but neither here nor there. Again, new companies, I get it. So I just thought it was weird because if that was something that deterred me from wanting to review the book for the show, because I tend to think of my content as family friendly, and if it's over the top, graphic or violent, I could have chose not to review it. But I'm glad that I did get the book. Overall, on the writing side from H.H. German, I felt like he did a solid job overall. I feel like his narrative structure of the book, or the flow of the book, was really like inconsistent, and it felt very inconsistent because it jumped all around. Certain information that I would kind of want in a first issue of a book about the protagonist's name, you know what I'm saying? Like, that would have been useful. It was, like I said, a lot of jump cuts throughout. You didn't get, in the jump cuts, you saw the push towards accentuating the bullying and the animal cruelty side, but we didn't get anything to help us connect with the main character. And if he's the reason why we're going to buy the book month to month, I want to know something about him to be able to connect with him as a character. I could tell he's a quote unquote good person because he's doing, he's did these acts to, protect these animals, and so forth. But it will change later on, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. That is he so much of a good person? Because there's extremes to everything. And I feel like that overall hurt the overall view of the book for me, because of the inconsistent nature due to how much it jumps around. And I don't think this is a full 22 issue comic. I think it might be like 16 pages, 20 pages tops. So it's not like it's a little bit shorter than your standard length comic. So you don't have much time. And I felt like they focused too much on the whole animal cruelty side and the sentiments about animal cruelty and anti-bullying. They over relied, they feel very strongly, came off a little heavy handed without, doing the character work to attach it to that customer to the character to, make you as a reader attach and want to go further. And then I felt like it ended up getting wiped out. All that good momentum, and well-intentioned by him in his writing to speak so vividly and candidly about those two things, was canceled out by its over reliance in the use of graphic violence. Violence to counter violence ultimately, for me, muddies the overall positive message that you worked so hard to set up in the beginning of the comic by the end of the comic. And when they emailed me about the graphic nature of the comic, it was like, well, if you like Punisher, you'll like this book. And I have a problem about that, and I've had a problem about this perspective about the Punisher for a long time, is that the Punisher is not an ultra violent character. He was a character that definitely skirted the line and did some non-traditional superhero things, but he's not a superhero. He's a vigilante. He's an anti-hero, and that one of probably the first in modern comics, history at the time when he came out. And I guess that's what has made him such an iconic character. It just, in the time of the 90s and late 90s, early 2000s, Marvel wanted to do something to shake things up. They did Marvel Max, and Garth Ennis, he did the first, mini series, I guess, during like the Marvel Knights time, and it took off. Then it spun out to Marvel Max later, and they were allowed to keep going over the top and over the top. To me, that's not the true Punisher. That's a Punisher that people love. I like other aspects of the Punisher that can reside in the Marvel universe proper, that he has some extreme means, but it's not ultra violent or violent for violence sake. And Garth Ennis kind of did a lot of that, even with The Boys in the beginning, which turned me off to The Boys as a comic book series in the beginning, that when it first started on DC before they booted him for it being overly graphic, and it moved over to a couple of different companies before settling what I think Dynamite or what have you. I don't tend to like that in my comics. That's not my thing. But so that was another detractor. But again, I already had the book at that point. I was already gonna review it regardless at that point. But I don't hold it against the book, but that's just not for me. But I know there's a lot of people in our community that like that kind of book. So hence why I felt like I need to do due diligence to review it based on that. The artwork from Javier Orabich, I felt like was solid throughout the issue. For me, it was probably the strongest point of this first issue. He did a great job visually setting up the world and the character. I also liked his work on the Calico suit. Like I said, it's a cross between like a Black Panther suit and maybe like an Iron Man suit, which I thought was kind of cool. But overall, I'll have to say about the book that it was a pretty solid offering from small independent company that can use our support. So again, if you're fans of like the Punisher Max style titles, the boys comics, things like that, I think this book is definitely for you, because it does have some graphic imagery in it for sure. It's not for the faint at heart. This is not for little kids at all. But I felt like all in all, it was a good read. I wish I would have got a little bit more setup about the world and the character than what I did, instead of the motivation of the character. It's hard to have the motivation of the character without anything about the character, how he came in possession of the suit, who's this mysterious person on the other end that he communicates with. It was just a lot of gaps there that I felt like I would have wanted in a first issue, but this is a 8-issue limited series, so we probably will get some of those holes and gaps filled in as the series goes along. I don't think you can get this digitally, so you would have to order physical copies of the book. I don't buy physical comics like that, so if it was digitally, I'm curious enough. And since it's only a 8-issue limited series, I would want to read the end story on it, or like once it comes out to trade, probably for myself, because I was intrigued by concepts that were started in this first issue. For me, overall, I'll give it a 6.225 out of 10, which on my rating scale is a wait for the trade. But I feel like if you're a fan of those books that I spoke about earlier in the review, it's definitely worth a try for you. But for me, it's definitely more of a wait for the trade type book for me to pick up. But that's all I have for you guys for this episode of First Reads. I'll be doing more of these episodes where I'll be trying different first issues of different books, mainline, independent, published books as well. So definitely be on the lookout for more to come in the future. Again, thank you all for your support of the show. You can follow me over on YouTube. It's youtube.com Comic Book Savant. We have the website comicbooksavant.com, and you can follow me on social media on Twitter and Instagram at Comic Book Savant, and also it's a Facebook page as well. Just do a search for Comic Book Savant, all one word. But again, that's all I have for you guys for this week. Hope you guys are staying safe. Take care, and there's more to come. So until next time, you guys stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.